Hello everyone, welcome back to Old Charles, where we dive deep into the teachings of the Bible and discover how they can inspire and guide us in our daily lives. Today we're going to explore Philippians 1 from the 1993 version of the Bible. This is a powerful passage, packed with lessons about joy, gratitude, and the importance of faith, especially in challenging times. Before we jump into chapter 1. Let's start with a little background. Philippians is a letter written by the Apostle Paul to the church in Philippi. Paul was actually writing this letter from prison. Despite his difficult situation, he pours out words of encouragement and joy to the Philippians. And this theme carries throughout the letter. His message shows us that joy isn't based on circumstances, it comes from a deep, unshakable faith in God. Now, let's break down chapter 1 verse by verse. I'll be reading from the 1993 Filipino Bible version to capture the essence of Paul's message in our own language. Let's start with verses mula kina Pablo at Timoteo na mga lingkod ni Kristo Jesus para sa lahat. NG banal na kainib ni Kristo Jesus a. Filipos, kasama ang mga tagapangasiwa at mga tagapagalingkod ng iglesia. Sumainyo nawa. Opening, he acknowledges both the leaders and the members of the church, showing how much he values the entire community. He wants them to feel God's grace and peace, which is especially comforting given the challenges they're facing. Tuwing nalalako kayo, nagpapasalamat ako sa aking Diyos. Sa bawat panalangin ko para sa inyong lahat. Lagay akong nagagalak. Dahil sa inyong pakikisa sa pagpapalaganap ng ebanghelyo mula pa sa unang araw hanggang ngayon. Tinitiyak ko na ang Diyos na nagpasimula ng mabuting gawa sa inyo ay siyang magtatapos nito hanggang sa araw ni Kristo Jesus. Paul expresses deep gratitude for the Philippians. Notice how he says he's filled with joy every time he prays for them. Even though he's in prison, he's not focused on his own troubles. Instead, he's grateful for the Philippians' faithfulness in spreading the gospel. Verse 6 is especially powerful. Paul reminds them and us that God, who started a good work in us, will complete it. It's a reminder of God's faithfulness. Whatever he starts, he finishes. This part of Philippians 1 is so inspiring because it shows how Paul finds joy in his relationship with God and his partnership for Christ. And if he dies, that's even better because he'll be with Christ. This perspective is so powerful it reminds us to see our own lives as opportunities to serve, knowing that God's purpose gives us a reason to live with courage. As we come to the end of chapter 1, we see that Paul's words are full of encouragement and hope. Philippians 1, where we explore the stories, history, and deeper meaning of the Bible. Today we're diving into the historical background of the book of Philippians. We'll cover where it was written, who wrote it, and what made the church in Philippi unique. This context can help us understand the powerful messages in Philippians more clearly. Let's get started. What was Paul doing in prison? In around AD 60 to 62, Paul was under house arrest in Rome for his faith. During his imprisonment, he wrote letters to various churches to encourage them, share teachings, and address challenges they were facing. Philippians is one of these letters, along with others like Ephesians, Colossians, and Philemon, which are often called the prison epistles. Let's go back to the beginning. How did the church in Philippi start? The story begins in the book of Acts. Christian church. During his second missionary journey, Paul had a vision where a man from Macedonia called out, asking him to come and help them. Interpreting this as a call from God, Paul and his companions Silas, Timothy, and Luke traveled to Philippi. When they arrived in Philippi, they began preaching, and one of their first converts was a woman named Lydia, a successful businesswoman who dealt in purple cloth. Lydia was a wealthy and influential figure, and after being baptized, she invited Paul and his companions to stay in her home. Her support helped the church gain a strong foundation in Philippi. This is a reminder of how God can use anyone, regardless of their status or background, to further his kingdom. Now, let's talk about Philippi itself. Philippi was a Roman colony, which meant it had a special status in the Roman Empire. It was populated largely by retired Roman soldiers and Roman citizens who were granted land there as a reward for their service. Because of this, Philippi had a strong Roman influence. And its citizens were very proud of their Roman citizenship. This context explains why Paul talks about the concept of citizenship in Philippians, where he reminds the believers that their true citizenship is in heaven. This was a powerful message to people who took pride in their Roman identity. Paul was encouraging them to place their identity in Christ above any earthly title or allegiance. One unique thing about Philippians is the closeness between Paul and the church. Unlike other letters where Paul had to correct or rebuke a church, in Philippians Paul's tone is warm, grateful, and encouraging. The Philippians had supported Paul's ministry financially, even when other churches didn't, and they had a deep, loyal connection with him. This is why Paul often refers to them as his partners in spreading the gospel. One of the purposes of this letter was to thank the Philippians for their support and to encourage them to continue living faithfully. He also wanted to update them on his condition in prison and reassure them that his suffering was not in vain. Understanding the historical context of Philippians helps us see its themes more clearly. One of the central themes in Philippians is joy, which Paul emphasizes throughout the letter. It's remarkable because, remember, he's writing this from prison. Despite Philippians 2, Paul encourages the believers to be united, following the example of Jesus, who showed ultimate humility by becoming human and sacrificing himself. This theme was important in Philippi because, in a city so focused on status and citizenship, Paul's message was a radical call to put others before oneself. Lastly, there's the theme of faithfulness. Paul reminds the Philippians to stay strong in their faith, even when things are difficult, because God will complete the good work he has started in them. It's a powerful reminder for all of us, no matter our circumstances. As we wrap up, it's amazing to see how much history, culture, and personal connection shaped the book of Philippians. Understanding its context gives us a richer perspective on Paul's words and helps us appreciate his message of joy, faith, and unity even more. Philippians today, we're exploring one of the most remarkable things about the book of Philippians. It was written from prison. How does someone like Paul stay so positive and encouraging while he's in chains? In this video, we'll look at the conditions surrounding the writing of Philippians, the hardships Paul faced, and the powerful message he shares despite. Understand where Paul was when he wrote Philippians. Paul was under house arrest in Rome, likely between AD 60 and 62, awaiting trial. He had been arrested multiple times before for preaching about Jesus, but this imprisonment in Rome was particularly serious. He was facing the Roman authorities, and his life was on the line. Being under house arrest meant Paul wasn't free to leave, but he did have a limited amount of freedom. People could visit him, and he could write letters. It was during this time that he wrote several letters known as the prison epistles, which include Philippians, Ephesians, Colossians, and Philemon. Paul's imprisonment was a time of great uncertainty. He didn't know if he would be released or sentenced to death. And yet he doesn't dwell on his hardships in Philippians. Instead, he expresses gratitude, hope, and even joy. This speaks volumes about his character and faith. In Philippians 1:12-14, Paul even says that his imprisonment has actually helped spread the gospel. His guards and others in Rome were hearing about Jesus because of his situation. Instead of seeing his imprisonment as a setback, he saw it as an opportunity. This outlook shows us that his letter, that his joy doesn't come from his situation. It comes from his faith in God. In Philippians 4:4, he famously says, "Rejoice in the Lord always." I will say it again, rejoice. He's not saying this because everything is going well for him. He's saying it because his joy is rooted in God's unchanging love and faithfulness, not in his temporary circumstances. Paul also finds joy in his connection with the Philippians. Throughout the letter, he calls them his partners in spreading the gospel. Their faithfulness and support give him hope and encouragement. This reminds us of the power of community even when we're struggling. Having people who stand with us can bring strength and joy. Paul's words to the Philippians encourage them to stay strong and united. He urges them to live humbly and support one another, following the example of Jesus, who showed ultimate humility and love. In Philippians 2, he writes about Jesus' willingness to come to earth, to suffer, and to give his life. This message would have resonated deeply with a community facing their own struggles and challenges. Paul encourages them to keep their eyes on God, to stay united, and to have faith that God would. We learn from Paul's attitude and his message to the Philippians. His example teaches us to look beyond our current situation and find hope in our faith. If Paul could find joy in a Roman prison, we can find joy and strength even in our own challenges. Like Paul, we can focus on God's faithfulness and remember that he can use any situation for his purpose. Paul's message also reminds us to rely on our community. Just as the Philippians encouraged and supported him, we too need to stay connected to others, lifting each other up in prayer and support. Life may bring us challenging conditions, but through faith and community, we can endure and even find joy. Paul's letter to the Philippians is a beautiful reminder that joy isn't tied to where we are or what we're going through. It's tied to our relationship with God, even in difficult conditions. Paul's faith was his foundation, and his words inspire us to have that same faith, courage, and joy. Thank you for watching, and if you found this video inspiring, please like, share, and subscribe. Let us know in the comments how you found hope and joy in difficult times. Until next time, keep the faith and God bless.